was painting my 7-year-old's toenails with a felt tip pen when 43 messages lit up my phone at once. Lily held her feet perfectly still and whispered that ours was the best Friday night in the whole county, even though it was just the two of us and a supermarket cake with one candle left over from her birthday. Then I read the message pinned at the top of the family group chat. My mother had planned a dinner. A big one. Her retirement celebration, 40 years of teaching, the restaurant with the white tablecloths downtown. She had invited my brother, my sister, their families, the neighbors, the women from her book club, the principal she'd worked under for 20 years. She had not invited me or Lily. And then, so that no one had to wonder why, she had typed the sentence that changed everything she thought she knew about this family. She wrote, "Some chapters of a woman's life are best celebrated with the people who made her proud." Nadia understood what family means. My son Marcus understood. Kara, that's me, chose a different path. We respect it. But tonight is not that table. 31 people read it. 12 reacted with a heart. Nobody said a word. I set the phone face down on the carpet. Lily asked if I liked the color she'd chosen. I told her it was the finest shade of purple in recorded history. I meant it. I finished the cake. I read her 2 chapters of her book. I kissed her forehead and turned off the light. And then I sat at my kitchen table in the quiet, and I opened my laptop. Not to complain. Not to draft an angry text. To start a spreadsheet. My name is Kara Merritt. I am 36 years old. I am a single mother and a forensic bookkeeper. And the night my mother announced to the family that I had chosen the wrong path, her son-in-law was 6 weeks away from presenting her retirement dinner as the closing act of the most elegant financial fraud I had ever had the misfortune of documenting. He called me the difficult one. He forgot that the difficult one keeps the books. Welcome to Real Family Voices, where the women they underestimated are always the ones holding the receipts. If someone in your family ever measured your worth and got the math wrong, pull up a chair. This story belongs to you. Drop a comment, tell me where you're watching from, and subscribe. Because what my father left behind in a storage unit, locked in a box with my name on it and no key in sight, is the part that ended all of it. You need to understand who I was before that group chat message, because nothing that followed makes sense without it. I grew up in a house where being useful was the highest form of love. My mother, Elaine Merritt, taught 4th grade for 4 decades. My father, Dennis, ran the books for 3 small businesses in town until his heart gave out at 61. He was the kind of man who kept receipts in labeled envelopes and balanced his checkbook every Sunday morning like it was church. I got that from him. The precision. The inability to let a wrong number sit. My brother Marcus is 5 years older and runs a landscaping company he built from nothing. He works hard and laughs easily, and has never once in his life asked a complicated question about anything. He trusts people the way golden retrievers trust strangers. It is his best quality and his worst one simultaneously. My sister Nadia is 2 years younger, and married to a man named Brennan Cole who sells commercial real estate, and tells stories at dinner tables the way other people breathe. Constantly, without effort, never quite arriving at the point. Brennan is charming in that particular way that makes you feel seen, until you realize he's doing it to everyone in the room at once. I had been watching Brennan Cole for 4 years with the specific attention of a woman who balances other people's books for a living, and I had never quite been able to put a number on what felt wrong about him. I was a single mother because the man I'd trusted most had turned out to be very good at appearing trustworthy, and I had learned that lesson the expensive way before Lily was born. I didn't talk about it much. It wasn't a wound anymore, just a fact, the way a scar is a fact. What I had on the other side of that was Lily. My daughter. 7 years old, serious-faced, incapable of dishonesty, the finest person I had ever met. And a bookkeeping practice I'd built from nothing, 3 clients in year 1 and 11 in year 3, working at a kitchen table with a baby monitor hissing beside my laptop. My family called it a side hustle. They said it with fondness, the way you describe a child's lemonade stand. I let them. People who underestimate you are only dangerous when they have your passwords. And nobody in my family had mine. The message sat in the family chat all weekend, blooming slowly with hearts and exclamation points like a flower nobody questioned. So excited for you, Elaine. 40 years. You deserve every beautiful moment of this. Marcus is getting his suit pressed, ha. The restaurant is going to be perfect. Brennan already picked the wine. Brennan had already picked the wine. I watched the thread from the outside the way you watch a film you've already seen the ending of, knowing which door not to open, unable to stop anyone else from walking through it. My mother hadn't accidentally left me out. I knew that the moment I read the message. There was no group chat snafu, no forgotten phone number. She had typed my name and made a decision about it, deliberately, publicly, with 31 witnesses, and she had dressed it as respect. We respect her path. I had tried to tell her once, 2 years ago, about Brennan. Not with accusations, just with a question. Mom, has Brennan ever shown you the investment prospectus for the development he keeps talking about? Has anyone actually seen the numbers? She had looked at me with the expression she reserved for students who'd confused there, and said that some people supported family, and some people picked at it. I had not asked again. But I had started watching. Here is what watching looks like when you are a forensic bookkeeper. It looks like nothing from the outside. It looks like a woman eating her casserole and passing the rolls and asking about the kids and going home. It looks like nothing at all, because the work happens later, at the kitchen table, after Lily is asleep, in spreadsheets nobody is invited to see. For 2 years, I had been keeping a column. Not because I had proof. Because I had a number that didn't feel right, the specific sensation I get when a client's books have a gap in them that shouldn't exist. A gap that has the shape of intention rather than accident. And that weekend, reading the group chat from my kitchen floor with purple nail polish drying on my fingertips, I felt the gap get bigger. Because Brennan had picked the wine. For a dinner that had 40 guests and a private room reservation at the most expensive restaurant in town. And Brennan Cole had not had a closed deal in 8 months. I need you to stay with me here, because I know what some of you are thinking. You're thinking, Kara, why didn't you just say something? Why didn't you warn your mother directly? I had. Twice. And both times, the message had gone exactly where messages go in a family that has already decided who the difficult one is. Nowhere. So I did the thing that actually works, which is slower and less satisfying and completely devastating in the end. I opened a spreadsheet, and I started doing what I was trained to do. Stay with me. Because what I found at the bottom of that column changed the shape of everything my family thought they were celebrating. Brennan Cole had been selling the family on Ridgeline Commons for 3 years. A mixed-use development on the north edge of town. Retail below, residential above. The kind of project that sounds inevitable when a man tells it right, and Brennan told it better than anyone. He had the renderings. He had the artist's impressions. He had a scale model on a table in their study that Nadia dusted every week like a shrine. He had been taking investments from family members since the previous spring. Not large ones. Careful ones. The kind that don't trigger a conversation. 15,000 from my mother's savings, just to be part of something special. Elaine, you deserve a piece of this. 10,000 from Marcus, who trusted the way golden retrievers trusted strangers. A loan from my aunt that had been described as a bridge until the first permits came through. The permits had not come through. I knew this because permits are public record, and public records are free, and I had looked. What I found was not a delayed project. What I found was a project that had never meaningfully existed. The parcel Brennan described as his anchor site had been under option 18 months ago. That option had expired. The land had transferred to a different buyer entirely, a developer from the next county whose planning applications were all on file and contained no mention of Brennan Cole or anything called Ridgeline Commons. The site was gone, had been gone for over a year, and the money was still going in. I pulled county records the way my father taught me to pull anything important, slowly, thoroughly, without announcing what you were looking for until you found it. I found the expired option. I found the new owner. I found a business entity Brennan had registered 18 months ago, an LLC with a name that sounded like a real estate holding company and listed exactly one asset, a bank account into which I could trace, through 3 of my family members' own disclosures over Sunday dinners, approximately $86,000. $86,000 had gone into a company that held nothing but itself. I built the folder the way I build all my folders. Tabbed, dated, cross-referenced. Every document sourced from public records that a judge could pull without my help. I printed the county parcel map. I printed the option agreement expiration notice. I printed the new ownership transfer. I printed Brennan's LLC registration and the single bank account attached to it. And then I found the thing that turned this from a family problem into something else entirely. My mother's name on a personal guarantee. Buried in the documents Brennan had asked her to sign 2 months earlier, framed as something that protected her investment, was a clause that pledged her home as collateral for a business loan Brennan had taken in the LLC's name. Her house, the one my father had paid off in the last year of his life, the one with 40 years of family dinners in the walls and my father's workbench still in the garage. She had signed it. She had signed it because Brennan had a warm smile and she had a daughter she'd decided to trust instead. I sat back from my laptop. It was 11:47 on a Tuesday. Lily was asleep. The house was quiet. I did not feel triumph. I felt the cold flat clarity of a balance sheet that has finally told the truth. And I felt it the way you feel it when the truth is also a disaster you have to decide what to do with. Here is what I have not told you yet. The same week I found the personal guarantee. A letter arrived for me. Not my mother, not Marcus. Me. From a law office downtown. My father's name in the return address. My father had been dead for 3 years. I had not known he had a lawyer. The letter said there were documents held in my name, that I was asked to come in at my convenience. 2 things that were always going to arrive together had just arrived at the same time. Stay with me, because what my father had done quietly in his last year is why the retirement dinner ended the way it did. The law office was small and warm and smelled like old paper and someone's lunch. The attorney, a man in his 60s named Mr. Parrish who had known my father since before I was born, brought out a sealed envelope first and set it on the desk between us. My name on the front. My father's handwriting. The same blocky careful letters he used to label his receipt envelopes. Then he brought out a file. He explained it while I read. My father, in his last year, had spent a great deal of time thinking about what he called the arithmetic of his family. He had seen, more clearly than he let on, the way certain dynamics ran. He had known my mother's trust was a gift that men like Brennan could turn into a liability. He had known his daughter Cara kept better books than anyone gave her credit for. So he had done what careful men do when they cannot fix a thing themselves. He had put the important thing somewhere safe. The house, my parents' house, the paid-off one, the one with 40 years of dinners in the walls, was held in an irrevocable trust. Not owned outright by my mother, as everyone assumed. Held in trust. With protections on it that meant no personal guarantee, no matter how warmly signed, had any legal authority over it. The guarantee Brennan had walked my mother through signing? Unenforceable. Because the house was never hers to pledge. My father had known. He hadn't known about Brennan specifically, but he had known about the shape of things, the way a man who keeps books for 40 years understands that a house is the kind of thing that needs to be protected from the best intentions of people who don't read the fine print. And the trustee he had named, the person whose signature was the only one that could ever move a single board of that house, was me. Not Nadia. Not Marcus. Not my mother. Me. I held the papers and Mr. Parrish let me hold them. Outside, the town went about its Tuesday. And I understood, sitting in that small warm office, that my father had not left me a document. He had left me a position. A standing. The legal authority to do the one thing nobody in that family had ever once offered me. To be the person in the room that mattered. I called Mr. Parrish's office the next morning, and we began the work. He confirmed that the personal guarantee Brennan had obtained was entirely void. No court would enforce a claim against an irrevocable trust that the signer had no authority over. We documented that formally. We put it in a letter. We prepared a second letter for the bank that had extended the business loan, explaining that the collateral they believed they held did not exist in the form they'd been told. The house was safe. My father had made it safe before he left. But the $86,000 that had gone into Brennan's LLC was a different matter. That was money that had left people's accounts and entered a company that held nothing. That was a matter for a different kind of letter. I spent the next week writing that one. My mother's retirement dinner was on a Saturday. The restaurant had a private room, chandeliers, A menu that cost more than my monthly car payment. 40 guests in their good clothes, holding good wine, celebrating 40 years of a woman who had genuinely spent her life teaching children to read. I had not been invited. I had arranged to be there anyway. Not to cause a scene. That was never the plan. Scenes are what people who have no other options make, and I had options. I had a folder in my bag and a letter from a law office, and a father's trust document, that superseded every warm smile Brennan had ever deployed at a dinner table. My plan was to find Brennan privately, hand him what I had, and give him one clear choice. Tell the family himself, tonight voluntarily, or I would ensure that the bank, the county prosecutor's office, and every person in that room learned what was in the folder before dessert. I arrived just after the salad course. Lily was with my neighbor, the one who had become over 3 years, the closest thing to the family I had always deserved. I walked into the private room in my plain work coat, and the room did that thing rooms do when someone arrives who wasn't expected. A small silence. A reorientation. Nadia saw me first. Her expression did something complicated, and then composed itself into the smile she used when she was buying time. Brennan saw me 3 seconds later and his smile did not change at all, which told me everything about how experienced he was at this particular moment. The moment someone who knows too much walks into the room. He was experienced. He just wasn't more experienced than me. I made my way to him at the bar before he could move. I kept my voice below the conversation around us. I told him I had the parcel records and the LLC filing and the personal guarantee and the trust document, and that I had given his bank a detailed letter that morning explaining the collateral situation. I told him the family did not have to know tonight if he chose to stand up right now and tell them himself. His smile was still in place. It was a remarkable smile. I genuinely admired the mechanics of it. He said he didn't know what I was talking about. I said, then I'll explain it to everyone at once. And I stepped back and crossed the room to the table where my mother was sitting, and I sat down beside her in the empty chair that nobody had been meant to fill. She looked at me. Her face did the whole complicated thing, surprise, then the old reflexive irritation, then something underneath it that I recognized because I had my father's eyes and my father's eyes had always seen through her straight to the fear. Kara, she said. This is not. I know, Mom. I said it gently. I'm not here to ruin your evening. But I need you to hear something before Brennan speaks again, because he's about to and you deserve to know what's true first. She went very still. 40 years of 4th grade teaches a woman to recognize when a moment has turned into something that requires full attention. I took out the folder. I did not make a speech. I laid 3 documents in front of her the way I lay documents in front of clients, quietly in order, with the most important one on top. The first was the county record showing the Ridgeline Commons parcel, sold 14 months ago to a different buyer. The second was the LLC registration and the bank account summary, with a number at the bottom, and the names of every family member who'd contributed against it. The third was the trust document. My father's signature at the bottom. My name as trustee. The date 4 months before he died. The house is safe, I told her. Dad made sure of it. But the money that went to Brennan is a different story. She looked at the documents. She looked at them the way people look at something that is reorganizing everything they thought they understood, which is slowly, and with the particular expression of someone who is deciding whether to be angry at the information, or at the person delivering it. Then the room changed, the way rooms change when the person who's been managing the temperature loses their grip on the thermostat. Brennan had come across from the bar. He had his confident voice on. Elaine, don't let her do this tonight of all nights. This is Kara's way. She's always had to be the one who. Brennan. My mother said his name. Just his name. He stopped. She looked at him with the expression she had spent 40 years perfecting. The expression that had silenced 4th graders in principals and parent-teacher conferences, and every room that ever needed to go quiet. And she said the 6 words that told me everything I had ever needed to know about who my mother actually was underneath the pride. Show me the land parcel yourself. He couldn't. And every person at that table watched him not be able to. Marcus was the first to say it out loud. Brennan. Where's the land? Not angry yet. Just the golden retriever confusion of a man realizing the door he just walked through is not the one he was told it was. Nadia sat very still in the way of someone who has known something was wrong for a long time, and has been protecting the knowing, because the alternative was unbearable. Brennan began explaining. He was very good at explaining. He had the vocabulary of a man who had explained his way out of rooms many times before, and for a while the room let him, because 40 guests in good clothes want to believe the explanation more than they want to believe the documents. Then my mother picked up the trust document. She read it once. She read it twice. She set it down. She looked at the date. She looked at my name. And I watched her understand what her husband had done, quietly, in his last year, without telling her, without asking her opinion, simply making sure. She hadn't known. I could see her not knowing in the way her hand flattened on the table. The specific stillness of a woman receiving something she didn't ask for, and isn't sure she deserved. He named you, she said. Not accusingly. Just true. Yes. He didn't tell me. No. A long pause. The restaurant ambient noise continued around us, entirely indifferent to the architecture collapsing at this table. He knew, she said. Not a question. He knew you trusted easily, and I read everything twice. He thought that combination was more useful than one of them alone. She looked at me for a long moment, and I watched something move behind her face that I had never once seen there in 36 years. Not pride exactly. Something quieter than pride. Something closer to the expression she'd had the first time she saw Lily do something remarkable. The involuntary kind, before she could arrange her face around it. Brennan was still talking. Marcus had stopped listening to him. The table had reorganized itself around the documents the way tables always reorganize around something true. And then Nadia stood up. I had been prepared for Nadia to defend him. I had been prepared for the performance of it, the tears, the accusation that I was jealous, that I was doing this because I'd never been happy for them, that I had always had to be the one who. She didn't. Nadia stood up and she looked at her husband with a very clear face. The face of a woman who has been adding up a column of her own for longer than she admitted. And she said, Brennan, where is the land? Same words as Marcus. Different voice entirely. The voice of someone who already knows the answer, and is asking so that everyone in the room can hear him fail to provide it. He couldn't provide it. He tried 3 more approaches and he couldn't provide it. Then he did what men like him always do when the room stops cooperating. He left it. Not dramatically. He didn't storm out. He simply removed himself from the table with the smooth efficiency of someone who understands that staying has stopped serving him. And he walked through the private room and out the front door of the restaurant, and got into the car whose payments were 2 months behind. And he drove in the direction of somewhere that wasn't here. Nadia sat back down. The room was very quiet. My mother was still looking at the trust document. At my father's signature, for months before he died. At my name in his careful blocky letters. She set it down. She looked at me. And then she said the thing I had been waiting 36 years to hear. Not because I needed her to say it. I had stopped needing it a long time ago. But because Lily deserved to grow up in a family where the truth had been spoken out loud at least once. I was wrong about your path. She said it plainly. No performance. No arrangement. Just the flat, costly truth of a woman who had taught children the importance of honesty for 40 years, and was finally applying it at her own table. I was wrong about what I called it. And I was wrong to say it where everyone could read it. I let it land. I gave it the full weight of the silence it deserved. Then I said, I know, Mom. And I meant it the way you mean something when you have already decided to move forward from it. Not forgiveness as a performance. Just the genuine release of putting down something heavy. She nodded. Her eyes were bright. The champagne no one had drunk was going warm in the glasses. Your father, she said quietly. He always said you were the one who read the fine print. He was right, I said. And he made sure it mattered. The bank received my letter and moved within the week. The personal guarantee was unenforceable, as Mr. Parrish had confirmed, and the bank's own legal review agreed. The loan was Brennan's alone to answer for. The house was never in danger once the trust was established. The $86,000 was a different matter. 3 of my family members had claims. I connected them with an attorney who handled exactly this kind of thing. And I'll tell you what she told me. Recovery in these situations is slow and uncertain. What is certain is the paper trail. And the paper trail was clean and thorough and built by someone who keeps the books. Brennan is answering for it. Not at a dinner table. In a room with a different kind of table, and people whose job is to read the fine print. Nadia and I talk now. Carefully, on terms that are still being built. She has a long road of her own. I am not going to rush her down it, and I am not going to walk it for her. But I leave the light on. Marcus apologized in the parking lot that night, which is the most Marcus way to apologize, and I told him there was nothing to forgive on his end. He'd been told a story by someone very good at telling stories. That's not a character flaw. It's just being human. My mother kept her dinner. Not the one she planned. A smaller one 3 weeks later, at her kitchen table. She called me and asked me to bring Lily. She made a pot roast. Lily sat across from her grandmother for the first time and told her, very seriously, about a frog she had named after her teacher. My mother listened with her whole face, the way she must have listened to 4-year-olds for 40 years, and asked follow-up questions about the frog's personality and habitat. Lily decided, at the end of dinner, that her grandmother was actually excellent. My mother walked me to my car afterward, just the two of us, and she looked at me in the specific way of someone who has something to say and is choosing the words carefully. You didn't have to come to the dinner, she said. You could have mailed the documents. I know, I said. Why didn't you? I thought about my father's letter. About the house he'd locked inside a trust. About a man who had known his family's arithmetic better than anyone, and had quietly arranged for the right person to hold the answer. Because you're worth telling the truth to in person, I said. Even when it's hard. That's what real family does. She pressed her lips together. She nodded once. Then she went inside. I sat in my car in her driveway for a minute. The town was quiet. The house was lit up warm behind me. My daughter was asleep inside it, her frog story told, her grandmother determined. I thought about a group chat message. 31 hearts on a sentence that was wrong about everything. And I thought about a letter in my father's handwriting, naming me for the job nobody had thought to give me. Some columns take years to balance. But they always balance. If your family has ever decided which path you chose without reading the fine print of who you actually are, I want you to hear this. The people who measure you wrong are only dangerous if they have access to the things that matter most. Your children. Your home. Your real worth. Protect those things the way my father protected the house. Quietly, legally, thoroughly, before anyone knows to look. Keep your receipts. Build your folder. And when the room finally asks the right question, be ready to answer it in the calm, flat voice of someone who has been reading the documents the whole time. Because the difficult one, the path chooser, the one they left off the dinner list, she is almost always the one who actually kept the family standing. And eventually the room figures that out. Drop a comment and tell me about the table where you weren't invited. I read every single one, and I promise you, you are not alone at it. Subscribe to Real Family Voices. Because next week, we sit with a woman whose brother convinced their elderly father to change the will in a single afternoon. What she found when she finally got access to the attorney's call logs changed everything about what she thought she understood about that final visit. I will see you then.